lagi ikut zoominar. Jadi kalian tahu IALF nggak? Jadi itu kayak kayak apa namanya, tempat les bahasa Inggris gitu. Hari ini mereka buat zoominar atau training online gitu tentang membuat esai, scholarship esai kayak gitu. Jadi kita simak baik-baik yuk. Ini belum mulai sih, lagi perkenalan apa namanya IALF-nya seperti apa gitu. Kita simak yuk. Jadi mereka tuh punya dua. Jadi ini tuh sesi mereka coaching klinik gitu. Yang pertama tuh hari ini itu mereka ada tentang how to read scholarship esai kayak gitu. Jadi cara buat esai tentang beasiswa kayak gitu. Esai untuk beasiswa kayak gitu. Kita lihat bareng-bareng ya. Ini lagi belum mulai sih. Kalian ada nggak yang ada cita-cita gitu mau study abroad gitu, studi ke luar negeri gitu, ada nggak? Ini belum mulai sih. Aku dulu pernah aku dulu pernah ikut les IELTS di IALF, dan itu bener-bener enak banget. Kayak aku kan sebelumnya pernah ikut juga beberapa di tempat lain kan, cuman kalau di IALF itu tuh kayak bener-bener kena tuh loh, karena aku kan ikutnya yang full native, full bule gitu kan. Jadi kayak bener-bener langsung ini bisa tahu gitu, bisa progresnya tuh nampak gitu loh, kelihatan gitu. Dan sekarang kayak aku ada plan untuk mau iniin IELTS lagi. Jadi dan bikin, makanya ini salah satu ini yang training hari ini itu buat esai gitu. Kita tungguin mulai dulu ya.
Oke, I think ini udah kelihatan ya. Ya, oke, alright. So thank you so much teman-teman. Jadi sebenarnya ini lebih ke preparation ke LPDP in general dan juga how to get the LOA, karena memang ini penting banget ya tahapannya. Untuk teman-teman start, beberapa mungkin ada yang baru pertama kali, terus kemudian mungkin ada yang sudah pernah mencoba di batch sebelumnya ya. Dan di sini sih kalau saya sih highlightnya sebenarnya apa saja yang perlu dipersiapkan dari untuk awal entah itu dokumen untuk dari ke universitinya maupun ke institusi yang akan kita apply ya. Nah sebenarnya kalau untuk dari dokumen sendiri ini teman-teman bisa langsung akses ya di official website-nya LPDP. Di situ sebenarnya tiap tahun mereka update ya, selain dari persyaratan yang menurut saya kalau dari tahun ke tahun itu mereka udah cukup settle dan tidak ada perubahan yang
Kayaknya ada planning buat LPDP nggak? Kayak LPDP ada tiap tahun kan gitu. Nah kalau yang di luar negeri itu esainya pun bahasa Inggris gitu, buat LPDP juga.
PTDU ya, apa yang untuk dunia punya. Jadi yang I forgot the name, tapi itu dia punya jalur khusus sih sebenarnya kalau misalkan apply di situ. As far as I know, seleksinya ya kurang lebih sama ya. Nah ini kurang lebih kalau untuk dari gambarannya LPDP sendiri kan dari pemerintahnya kita ini fully funded, jadi memang akan di cover semuanya, keseluruhan biaya studinya dari tuition fee, kemudian living cost, dan juga nanti ada biaya-biaya lain yang berkenan.
Ada yang udah pernah dapat beasiswa LPDP nggak?
Persyaratannya ya tentu adalah Indonesia citizen ya, dan ini programnya bisa dipakai untuk yang master maupun yang untuk doctoral program PhD ya.
Setauku LPDP itu tuh dia full gitu, semua kayak dibayarin gitu. Jadi enak banget kalau bisa dapet gitu.
Lalu kemudian pada saat kita mencoba untuk mendaftar, sebenarnya pasti banyak yang bingung ya, cepatnya dari mana. Kalau saya bilang baca dulu sih bookletnya, karena itu yang paling penting, informasi keseluruhan mengenai beasiswa tersebut, komponen apa yang akan di cover dari beasiswa tersebut, itu semuanya ada di sini. Nah tentu dengan booklet yang sudah ada kita juga harus mengkaitkan dengan program yang kita akan tuju, yang itu nantinya juga kan berpengaruh sama esai beasiswa kita yang akan kita submit di portal beasiswa LPDP gitu. Jadi makanya langkah awalnya ya tentunya dari list yang sudah tertera kita harus riset dulu ya programnya apa aja, terus kemudian mungkin dari segi rankingnya ya fakultasnya. Jadi karena beberapa kampus ada yang secara general dia nge-rank, tapi mungkin dia untuk jurusan yang teman-teman ambil itu dia lebih tinggi lagi, jadi rankingnya per subjek gitu. Jadi mana nih yang highlight yang menurut teman-teman akan lebih make sense untuk ambil program tersebut, karena nanti juga kalau misalkan teman-teman udah lolos di tahap berkas gitu ya dan mungkin scholastic test, nantinya pada saat interview akan di double check kembali gitu, kenapa ambil jurusan tersebut di universitas tersebut. Nah itu kalau teman-teman sudah tahu alasannya, itu akan menjadi salah satu poin yang penting yang akan teman-teman sampaikan ke kampusnya gitu. Nah itu dari universitas pilihan ya. Terus kemudian ya tentu dari persyaratannya, berapa sih untuk jurusan tertentu itu mereka minta yang lebih tinggi. Misalkan contoh IELTS-nya kan kalau di LPDP secara general dimintanya itu 6,5, tapi untuk beberapa jurusan tertentu misalkan Master of Teaching misalkan itu mintanya 7.
Biasanya kalau yang IPS tuh dia lebih tinggi, 7 biasanya IELTS-nya. Lagi komunikasi, HI gitu-gitu tuh kalau di luar negeri itu IELTS-nya 7. Atau TOEFL ya, TOEFL IBT itu dia lebih tinggi lagi kalau yang IPS.
Ini yang dipastikan tentunya dari program yang di-apply itu align dengan background study kita atau dengan karir background kita juga gitu. Dan di jangka panjangnya itu bisa support career planning kita. Itu kan nanti juga akan jelaskan juga di esainya. Nah, ini tadi yang last part-nya ya persyaratan bahasa. Selain bahasa ini juga kalau selain TOEFL, IELTS dan lain-lain ya, ini biasanya sih untuk teman-teman yang ngambil di program contohnya itu ada persyaratan tambahannya. Biasanya ada pengalaman kerja dan juga diminta dokumen seperti GMAT atau GRE. Ini biasanya khusus untuk kalau yang teman-teman nanti apply-nya ke destinasinya ke US. Itu yang apart from dari
kalau UK nggak pakai GMAT, ya beda.
Itu yang harus teman-teman juga consider untuk tes yang lain yang harus dipersiapkan juga. Terus dokumennya apa aja ya yang diperlukan? Sebenarnya sih kalau untuk yang dari dokumen aplikasi pada umumnya ya dimintanya cuma paspor ya, itu sebagai penunjuk bahwasanya kita adalah citizen tertentu dari negara tertentu.
Kalian ada yang punya cita-cita pingin daftar LPDP nggak? LPDP itu soalnya ada 2 sih, yang umum ya. Itu ada yang ke luar negeri sama ke dalam negeri gitu. Tujuan kampusnya ya. Dan dia bisa S2 sama S3 gitu.
Akademik transkrip dan ijazahnya ya, itu kalau misalkan yang belum dual bahasa ya teman-teman perlu terjemahkan. Nah ini yang untuk memudahkan sih biasanya dari kampus ya, mereka biasanya ada punya servis untuk kasih free atau mungkin lebih murah sih untuk penerjemahan dokumen. Tapi kalau surat recommendation ya, recommendation letter diminta dari profesor atau employersnya. Nah, profesor ini kalau misalkan ke UK dia dimintanya 2, untuk beberapa negara yang lain nggak diminta bahkan gitu. Tapi khusus untuk kayak misalkan yang apply-nya PhD biasanya tetap akan diminta advance letter ya. Dan kalau memang udah kerjanya cukup lama, misalkan teman-teman mau apply-nya ke UK gitu ya, itu dimintanya 2 advance letternya. Kalau dari tempat kerjanya ada 1 dan misalkan kita baru fresh grad gitu ya, itu bisa diminta dari akademiknya 1, bisa dari dosennya atau dosen pembimbing. Tapi kalau kerjanya udah lama bisa diminta keduanya dari employer-nya. Situ ya kalau resume itu pasti akan diminta. Ini beberapa yang saya lihat teman-teman ada yang nulisnya itu kebalik, jadi kayak mungkin for example pengalaman kerja gitu ya atau education history itu ditulisnya tuh yang dari kayak misalkan educationnya tuh tulis dari SD sampai SMA itu nggak perlu sih, mungkin yang paling recent tuh biasanya mungkin SMA atau bachelor aja udah cukup, dan itu tulisnya paling recent yang terbaru di atas. Jadi misalkan ditulisnya yang saya tahu itu kayak dari SD-nya dulu kapan, SMP gitu ya, terus habis itu pengalaman kerjanya dari pertama kan, yang ditulis itu dibalik ya, jadi yang paling recent yang paling di atas gitu. Terus kemudian ini apa ya, research proposal atau study plan ini biasanya untuk yang kalau research students itu agak unik, jadi ini akan membedakan dengan teman-teman yang apply master by coursework atau yang TOEFL ya. Kalau yang coursework atau TOEFL itu kan cuma dokumen disiapkan semuanya ya, terus kemudian nanti dibantu nanti dari kami untuk masukkan ke admissions. Nah bedanya kalau misalkan teman-teman yang ada yang master ngambil yang by research atau yang PhD cukup sibuk gitu, atau bahkan yang kita coba lagi nih dari departemen research department, terus dilihat ini research proposal tentang apa, bahkan kita lihat dari dari supervisor atau profesor yang kalau itu yang mana gitu. Tapi in general biasanya harus mengkontak dan sendiri harus teman kalau misalnya dapat approval terus bisa apply dapat LOE 1 sampai 6 bulan sampai 7 bulan, jadi masing-masing individu akan berbeda. Jadi nanti don't worry, nanti bisa kita assess satu persatu gitu ya. Nah untuk ke LPDP scholarship-nya ya nanti teman-teman fokusnya adalah ke esainya sendiri ya, ini yang nanti langkahnya ya teman-teman harus start lihat dulu questions highlight-nya ditanya itu apa gitu. Terus habis itu apa yang teman-teman mau sampaikan di situ, reasoningnya why you have to pursue further study dan you deserve that gitu. Jadi harus di-explain, di-elaborate your reason apa kenapa gitu, kenapa harus di luar negeri gitu ya, kenapa kalau nggak di dalam negeri misalkan. Jadi siapa tahu juga itu nanti keluar ya di speaking interview, jadi harus disampaikan juga ke panelisnya alasannya kenapa sih gitu, dan kenapa di kampus tersebut, di negara tersebut gitu. Nah ini tadi seperti yang Mas Ferdi sudah sampaikan, nanti ada servisnya, jadi nanti sih bisa minta tolong untuk dibantu untuk dicek esainya yang nanti akan diberikan feedback yang sesuai dengan teman-teman yang sudah fisik. Terus kemudian ya ini yang teman-teman mungkin yang baru pertama kali coba LPDP, kalau teman-teman itu sudah dapat LOE dan sudah dapat, teman-teman akan dapat kesempatan untuk langsung ke interview lectures-nya ya. Jadi manfaatkan ini dari LPDP untuk bisa direct ke interview. Kalau misalkan udah dapat offer kan enak, jadi teman-teman bisa langsung fokus ke interview prosesnya aja. Nah selanjutnya seperti apa? Sebenarnya teman-teman bisa mengkontak IALF Global Counselors ya untuk dapat bantuan tambahan, discuss lebih lanjut tentang study plan yang teman-teman seperti apa. Dan kita juga bisa bantu teman-teman untuk provide application fee waiver yang memang dia nominalnya cukup lumayan gitu ya. Jadi ini bisa sekali teman-teman manfaatkan, dan kita bisa membantu teman-teman tuh nggak dilanjut dengan kebutuhannya LPDP itu dia nilainya seperti apa gitu. Dan tentu kalau misalkan saya boleh sarankan juga akan the scholarship community untuk membantu itu banyak sekali sih sebenarnya, teman-teman bisa cari ya untuk komunitas scholarship yang bisa support. Pun kita juga kadang sering sekali bikin sessions yang bisa membantu teman-teman nanti dapetin informasi dari alumni atau current students gitu. Selanjutnya berarti nanti compile dokumennya ya, terus kemudian nanti submit oleh tim kami. Kalau dapat LOE nanti kan teman-teman akan langsung dapat notify untuk bisa lanjut ke interview selections ya, di proses langsung nggak pakai scholarship test lagi gitu. Dan kalau misalkan sudah pass interviewnya, berarti nanti teman-teman sudah bisa accept LOE-nya dengan meeting dengan mentor dari LPDP. Jadi kami juga akan proses visa, keberangkatan, dan tempat tinggal dan lain-lain gitu. Dan tentunya tadi yang sudah sempat bilang personal statement is that oftentimes some has a personal statement, but the university or your scholarship provider may ask you to write a response to very specific questions. And this may be in the form of an essay or something shorter, like a paragraph where you have to write and explain the background or whatever the questions are asking in like 500 years, like that. This is also by business and graduate students, as we'll see in a moment. Now, when this happens, your statement needs to respond specifically to the question being asked. So there is no room for things that are not related to the question. So you must stick to the prompt. Now, some business students, as well as other students, the word school here is used to refer to university. So some universities will require you to write a response not for just one question. They may in fact ask you to provide a response for 3 or even more questions, which is why it's very important to prepare ahead. Like Mita said earlier, it's very good to prepare your essays or personal statements at the same time as preparing for IELTS test. A personal statement also is your chance to tell the university what motivates you and why you're suitable for their chosen program. Now, the reason behind this is that great universities, like the top 10 and top 30 top 50 universities in the world, all have thousands and thousands of applicants every single year. And all of them have excellent resumes, excellent CVs, and excellent academic transcripts. So how do you make yourself stand out in that crowd, right? So your personal statement is actually one way that you can do that. So definitely want to tell the admissions committee why you're a really suitable candidate for the program that you're applying for. Also because in addition to your personal statement, what you're submitting are like documents, so test results, like your IELTS test results, or your transcript, or your CV, which are like a list of your different accomplishments and achievements. Your personal statement will provide your graduate school with a sense of yourself as a human being, as a whole person. And this is why you want to talk a little bit about your personal background, of course, in relation to your university studies, and how your experiences have shaped you as a person, and how it happened to pursue a graduate degree. So, earlier we talked about how lots and lots of people apply to the world's top schools every single year. This is why your personal essay, your statement of purpose, is oftentimes a make or break piece of retention file because of what sets you apart from everybody else. Because of this, it is a good idea to spend a good deal of time brainstorming and writing answers to specify questions for each school, like we talked about earlier. Some schools bring out specific questions that they want you to address. Now, if your graduate school, if your master's program requires you to write very general, like personal statement, they may not help the length of the essay. So in that case, if the length is specified what you want to do, you're going to write an essay that is about 2 or 3 pages long, and you want it to be double-spaced as well. So that
Oke, jadi tadi tuh udah dijelasin ya di awal tadi tuh ternyata personal statement tuh ada 2 macam tuh. Jadi yang pertama ada the general comprehensive personal statements, itu tuh kita menulis semuanya kayak perjalanan kita gitu, atau ya personal statement yang ditulisnya tuh semua all, jadi kayak semuanya gitu. Biasanya itu untuk orang-orang yang mau daftar di medical atau law schools atau hukum, medical atau hukum gitu. Nah, yang kedua itu jenisnya itu the response to very specific question. Jadi personal statement yang menjawab pertanyaan spesifik. Nah, biasanya itu buat business school or graduate school applicants gitu. Jadi kayak pertanyaan spesifik gitu. Ya.
And here are some things that you want to find out before you begin the process of writing. Number one is the word limit. Now, this is going to vary wildly the cases. So, for example, at KCL, the King's College London, your personal statement needs to be about 4,000 characters, which is around 47 lines of text. Now, about means more or less, right? So today you have either 10, like in the area of 10 words fewer than 4,000 characters, or 10 words more than 4,000. Sorry, not 10 words, 10 letters. 10 characters or 10 characters, sorry, 10 characters over or 10 characters below the word limit. So there's not a lot of flexibility. Here is another example at the UCL, which is University College London. There's almost similar to London, but the UCL allows you to have a 3,000 character personal statement, and this includes spaces. Some schools will have different requirements. They might say something like 500 characters, so definitely watch out for those requirements. Now, if you upload your personal statement, because some people may choose to upload it to PDF instead, they may have other requirements, like your personal statement not being longer than the size of the A4 paper, and they may even require on the fact that some schools may require you to provide specific answers to questions. And something in the bullet in your essay separately. So you must integrate these 7 things in your essay. Take care that you read this very carefully so that your admission committee will have a look and read your essay and know that you have completed the requirements. Here's another example, and this is what a creative one. So the Stern Business School at NYU, every year they do something like this. They want essay, expect the students to come up with an essay that describes change, right? So here are some examples of themes that you can include in your application. Still from the Stern Business School at NYU, this school in particular likes to see how their prospective students express themselves. So in the Big Six, for example, they want you to pick 6 different images and then caption the images, which is very relevant to today's business. So it's not always like a very formal essay, but the thinking behind everything is the same. So very useful to show who you are as not only as a person, but also as someone working or someone studying in the field. And oftentimes they ask, like different ways that you're able to think creatively or critically. So that's why there are these different types of mistakes. Now, here is another example of something that's maybe asked, right? So sometimes universities will allow students to write an additional essay or a supplemental essay. That's the other name for it. This is optional because essays like this are usually written in the case that the prospective student, that the applicant does not have a background that meets the requirements of university. For example, maybe a student has finished high school and then they don't immediately go to university, or like there's a big gap in their CV or resume, or their IELTS score is a bit lower than what's expected. So in cases like that, pay attention to, of course, is the deadline. This is incredibly important because it does not matter how good of an essay you write. If you do not submit it within the deadline, then, well, it's just not considered. So different schools have different deadlines, and different countries often also have very different times for this. So here's an example from the London School of Economics. So their start dates, their application dates start in September. This is an example from 2023. So there are actually no deadlines for the LSC. They have rolling admissions. But keep in mind that they only have a limited number of seats, so they can only accept so many students in an academic year. So that's why they say that they encourage applicants to apply as early as possible. Here's another example. We're going back to the Stern Business School at the New York University in the USA. Sometimes schools have different deadlines. So, for example, the first deadline here is on the 18th of September, and if you apply at this time, you will be notified on December 1st, and so on. So there are different dates. And this is another example. This time it's from Australia. It's from the University of New South Wales, and they actually have even more dates than the other two. So definitely pay attention to the intake dates from different universities. Alright, so now let's get to the meat of the thing. So now on, we're going to mainly focus on the general type of writing a personal statement, because that is the most general kind of essay that you may be required to write. However, the tips that you learn in this session are also applicable to other types of personal statements, including the types of personal statements where you are asked to write very specific responses. So, a successful statement of purpose, a very successful statement, a personal statement, usually has four key elements. The first one is the clear articulation of your goals and interests. What this means is you want to clearly explain what your professional goals are, what your career goals are, what your academic goals are, and what your interests are in those areas. And what the school wants to see is that your goals and interests are aligned with the goals and interests of the school. In addition to that, your school, like the university that you're applying to, also wants to see that you will be a good fit, that you will be a very good student. Because of that, they want to see evidence that you have past experiences that fit with that sort of program, as well as whether or not you have achievements in the past that are aligned to what your goals are. I've seen that some people are raising hands. I'm not sure if that means you're going to ask questions. How about we do Q&A at the end? So you can collect your questions and then you can answer your questions. Help you remember the format or the structure. Think of a pie, a warm, delicious pie. So your paragraph will be in the pie structure. And pie here stands for point, which means the main information, which will then, so pie, information, and explanation. We discussed just now the structure of a paragraph. Let's move on and talk about the general structure. So this general structure is a structure that you should use for the general type of a personal statement. So in general, your first statement, if there are no other requirements, should contain 5 parts or 5 paragraphs. The first part, you want to talk about your background, or in other words, why you have chosen the subject. And in the second part, or the second paragraph, you want to include a mention of your educational background, which is especially important if your educational background is relevant to the program that you're applying for. Thirdly, you want to explain work experience, if you have any, and especially if you have work experience that are relevant. And after that, you're going to move away from talking about yourself as a person to talking about the school and what in the school makes you interested to apply to that school. So in the fourth part, you want to include specific reasons as to why you've chosen to apply for this specific program at this specific university and not elsewhere. And finally, in the fifth part, you're going to talk about your future plans kind of as a conclusion. And in this part, you want to make sure that the future plans that you're describing are relevant to parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the general structure of your personal statement. Now we're going to have a look at each part of the personal statement at greater detail. Closer look at part 1. So in part 1, we want a brief explanation of why you've chosen to study this subject. And look at the second bullet point. It says, make it interesting. Now, this is going to depend on like the academic culture of each country or each university. So this is something that you want to look out for as well. Some countries, particularly universities in the United States, will require you to write an interesting essay, as in they want to see your ability to write a strong personal narrative. So they require your writing to be engaging and compelling, whereas other places, they may want to see something that's very straightforward. They just want you to like just with the subject. So just with the subject. So on one hand, you want to make it personal, but on the other hand, it's not supposed to be, you know, like a year-by-year playback of every single thing that we about. So we're going to look at an example. So this example was written by a student who ended up being accepted at an Ivy League school in the USA. So Matthew was accepted in a pre-med.
Because I find life's intricacies so amazing. Biology and its related subjects are the most enjoyable topics for me. Within biology, our brains interest me the most, which with the countless neurons and chemicals give us unmatched emotion, uniqueness, and potential. Due to the possibilities of understanding emotion and mental problems from their source, I'd like to develop a good understanding of neuroscience and use it to help people overcome disease and mental barriers as a doctors, allowing them to achieve the highest possible quality of life. Oh, like this. Jadi personal statement tuh personal gitu, sangat personal.
So here, even though he writes it in a very articulate way, he's also making sure that the admissions committee knows why he's interested in biology and what his future goals are. So that's the sort of thing you want. Now, let's also have a look at part 2. So in part 2, you should talk about your educational background. Now, for some people, especially when they are trying to apply for a master's degree or a PhD, they may have done or like they may have studied something different during their undergraduate years. So they may have a different bachelor's degree than the master's degree that they want to pursue. And that's okay. If that is you, if your bachelor's degree is not relevant to your master's, what you want to do is to discuss transferable skills. What that means is you want to talk about like things that you learn in your bachelor's that you can still use in your master's study. So, in general, however, you want to mention all these four things regardless of whether or not your educational background is directly relevant to your degree. So you want to mention your previous schools and your program or your main subjects. You also want to mention relevant subjects that you study, as well as any relevant extracurricular activities. So this includes things like clubs, competitions, and so on. And you also want to mention of any important projects that you undertook in your previous studies. For example, if you had any research experience. So let's have a look at the frame that you can use. So, for example, you may write, during my undergraduate studies in your program, your major, I learned about, and then you're going to discuss some skills that you've learned. I also actively participated in several competitions, such as A and B, that exposed me to, and then you want to further describe the skills that you've learned from competitions A and B. As I was deeply interested in, you may want to include like a research topic. I decided to research, and then there goes the title of your research paper. Now keep in mind that this is only a frame, so this is the logic that you should use when you're writing, but the wording should not stay the same. If you only copy and paste the wording here, every single applicant is going to have the exact same essay, and the admissions committee is immediately going to know that you use a pre-made frame, and that's not what you want to do. So keep the logic, but you want to paraphrase, is what I mean. Now let's go on to part 3. So part 3 is work experience, especially if you have any work experience, and this includes internships and volunteering experiences. You should include this especially if your work experience is relevant to the degree that you want to study. So definitely include a mention of where you work and what it was, as in like your job title and your responsibilities. Now, part 3 is a great place to describe or to explain that you have great problem-solving skills. So one way that you can do that is by discussing one problem that you have experienced at work. Now, in this part, you want to use real and personal examples, which are relevant to your intended program at the university. In addition to describing a problem, you also want to describe the solution that you came up with for that problem. Again, showing the admissions committee that you're a strong candidate with problem-solving skills and critical thinking skills. And finally, you want to end the paragraph by describing the outcome of the problem. Now, we're going to look at another frame that you can base your paragraph off of. So let's read this together. After graduating in 2018 or whatever year, I started working as a physician at this company. My primary responsibilities included A and B. In one of my projects, you want to describe your project here, which was challenging because now you want to describe the problem in detail, right? Like you don't want to say something like, which was challenging because it was hard. During the project, I discovered several problems, such as A and B. These problems have caused. You want to discuss the impact of the problem. To deal with the problems I did, you want to describe in this part a great deal about how you come up with the solution. As a team leader, I took the measures that you take. I also asked my team to, this is where you show your kind of like leadership skills. And in the end, you may say, the project was successful because so-and-so. So part 4, why this program at this university? This is the part where you want to move away from your experience and your personal interests as a human being. Well, as a professional really, not really as a human being. And this is where you need to do research. So, especially for a master's and PhD level, you may want to include a mention of why you have decided to go back to school. As in, why is a bachelor's not enough? Why do you need a master's or a PhD degree? In addition to that, you opportunity to mention why you have chosen this specific program and not other programs, and why you have chosen this university and not other universities. And for these 2 bullet points, you want to include features that interest you at the university. So very specific features, like classes. You may want to name drop professors, especially like if you've engaged with their work before or you've been in touch with them. You may also want to mention other opportunities, like opportunities for internship and so on. What you do not want to include are things that are very generic, like I've chosen this university because this university is located in London and I've always wanted to go to London. I like Harry Potter. Like, you don't want to do that, right? You want to show that you've done your research about the specific program and the specific university. Now, at the PhD level, your university may also require you to have chosen a mentor, like a research mentor. So they may ask you to, like, it might be important for you to have contacted them in advance. So yeah, that's like a PhD level specific thing. And here's another frame. Let's go through this together just to make sure that we know what to do. So I am determined to continue my study at the University of Edinburgh because of its comprehensive curriculum and courses. For example, Module A will allow me to, you can name the specific classes that you're interested in and why you're interested in it. Moreover, I want to learn from, you can name drop a professor because this person is an expert in, this may require you to do a bit of a research on, who this professor is. Whose research interests align with mine. Most importantly, I want to join, like if there's a club or something else that you'd like to join, you want to mention it, and you also want to talk about why. And finally, we come to part 5, future plans. So, part 5 is where you talk about what you want to do after you finish your studies. And this should also function as a sort of conclusion. So this is where you want to talk about your short-term goals, again, in a way that is relevant to your studies, as well as your long-term goals, in a way that is also relevant to your studies. So this is not goals that are like, oh, I want to get married after I graduate. So it's more things that are like professionally aligned. And as well as that, because your essay needs to be thematic, you also want to make sure that your goals in part 5 are connected to the issue or the topic or the interests that you have mentioned in part 1. So like tie it all together. Make it a very cohesive, a very coherent essay. So here's a sample frame that you can use. After completing my studies, I will return to Indonesia and resume my role as whatever your position is at your institution. I plan to, like specific action plans to have, so I can, again, more action plans. And here is where you want to give a mention to the skills that you will have learned from the university. In order to do so, I will, again, with plans in the long run, I aspire to become like, what are your long-term career goals? Because I want to do some sort of motivational thing. So that's how you write a really good part 5. Now, as a final note, so after you finish outlining and after you finish drafting your essay, you want to make sure that you do these 4 things. First of all, you want to double check the requirements and styles. And what I mean by styles here is whether or not your university wants you to write an essay with a storytelling aspect. Like Matthew's essay earlier had a bit of a storytelling aspect. Some universities will not require that, so you want to check A, with the university website, and B, you also want to look up essays from successful people who have been accepted at the university.
Telepon, telepon.
Fine, especially if one of those autonomous.
Hai. Hai. Jadi tadi kita harus belajar tentang esai ya. Aku bacain beberapa catatan aku tuh. Jadi sebenarnya esai itu ada dua macam kan. Yang pertama tuh the general comprehensive personal statement. Itu biasanya kita dibebaskan untuk nulis apapun gitu. Nanti ada apa namanya ada nanti ada poin-poinnya gitu. Terus yang biasanya tuh kalau yang the general comprehensive personal statement itu biasanya dipakai standar buat medical atau law. Dia respon to very specific question. Jadi ada pertanyaan, nanti mereka jawab. Jadi sangat spesifik gitu. Nah biasanya itu di business and graduate school aplikasi di sekolah-sekolah bisnis gitu biasanya yang pakai sistem metode ini gitu. Nah terus biasanya atau 47 lines 47 baris gitu. Kalau kita tulis tangan ya, tapi kalau nanti diketik atau di apps itu nanti ada 3.000 kata gitu. Itu sih 3.000 karakter, sorry, bukan 3.000 kata ya. Terus nanti kita harus juga menjawab tuh ada apa namanya, strukturnya itu ada yang disebut the pie paragraph. Jadi PIE, P-nya itu poin-poinnya gitu. Terus yang I itu information, terus I atau E itu explanation. Jadi strukturnya seperti itu gitu. Nanti kamu bisa lihat di ini ya, nanti kamu bisa lihat di video yang udah aku save. Sebenarnya belum selesai, nanti kita lihat.
You're going to write part 2 normally, like talk about your undergraduate program, undergraduate studies as you would. So just following the structure right here. Now, in part 3, when you talk about work, you are going to discuss, again,
Ini
transferable
lagi
skills.
Q&A ya, tanya
So you
jawab
might
guys.
say something like, even though my bachelor's degree was in, I don't know, physics, circumstances meant that I had to work in accounting instead. However, I've come to realize that physics is my true passion, so now I want to go back to physics. But in my work as an accountant, I also learned useful skills for physics, including A, B, C, D. And again, highlight your problem-solving skills that will be useful in your physics master's degree. Things like, oh, I've learned to be a very strong problem solver, or I have learned to analyze data very carefully, I work with numbers every day, you know, that sort of thing. I hope that answers your question. Alright, so another question just came in, and this time it's from Muhammad Fadlan. In the LPDB essay, particular in contribution plan section, how details do you think we have to put our contribution plan? For example, if I want to be a junior engineer, should I explain how I get the position, or should I just focus on what I will do when I'm in that position? So, for essays such as this, Muhammad Fadlan, what you want to explain is how your master's or PhD studies will contribute to your future plan, right? So, for example, if you want to be a junior engineer in the future, your essay, your contribution plan essay, should discuss how your master's study that LPDP funds will actually contribute to your future as a junior engineer. So it's explaining that connection between your future studies and your future career that comes after the studies. So I hope that has answered your question as well. Okay, so I think I've gotten to all of the questions in the chat box. Do we have any more questions? So while we wait, you know, like while there are no more questions, or just in case there are no more questions, let's have a very quick look at the 2 QR codes
and I'll tell you how you can make the best use of each link. So I'm just going to go to Google Chrome. So let me explain how you can make the best use of each QR code. So this is from the QR code on the left. This is the personal statement, general structure examples document. So this document contains like what you need to include in each part, right? And again, it also has all of the information from the PowerPoint. Now, what you can do is you can read the example for each part and then match it to the bullet points up here. And all of the examples have been selected especially from successful candidates, successful prospective students that have been accepted at the top schools in the world. So that's an example from this person who went to Duke University. And again, that's part 2, educational background. Now, we had a couple of questions dealing what if my educational background is different from the studies that I want to pursue? And this is actually a really good example of that. So, as you can see, this person went to the however, she initially studied English. So there's a mismatch there. And she actually then went on to study economics. And again, what she's done is she's explained how her first major helps her to learn skills that are relevant. Let's read this just a little bit, just because there were some questions about this. So, as an English major at Boston University, I developed skills in writing, research, critical reading, and analysis. So even though this is not a pre-law degree, she's explained very well about how her different major leads her, and though they're unrelated to her law degree that she wants will help her in the future. Okay, so before we continue here, there is another question in the chat box from Nad. If my IELTS expired at the end of February, will it be possible to pass the administration test since the registration finished beforehand, or do I need to retake the test? You know what, Nad? This sounds like a question for IALF Global, because I think this is related to either LPDP or university admissions. So if anybody from the global team wants to take that,
yeah, probably we will answer after this session, Katie.
okay, so Nad, the global team will come back to your question later. Thank you for sending that in. We still have a couple of minutes left. So again, if you go down, part 3, work experience, if any, if relevant. And again, this is another example from someone who did a different job than where they want to go. So Joshua wants to go to the School of Law, but his job is, well, sort of broadly related, but like he did not used to work in the legal field. All right, so we have another question from Muhammad Fadlan. Muhammad Fadlan says, how to write the perfect closing statement in an essay? Oh, that's actually such a good question. I'm going to say something a bit cliche, and my answer is that there is no such thing as a perfect closing statement. What you want to do is make sure that your closing statement fits with the rest of your essay. That you're showing that, oh, I'm going to come out of your school and I'm going to learn something really good, and I'm going to contribute to society with all of the good things that I've learned from your school. That's what admissions committees want to hear. I hope that answers your question as well, Muhammad Fadlan. So yeah, it's not about like writing the perfect closing statement. It's about like addressing what the committee wants to see. Now, why this program is at this university? Let's go back here, and this is from someone anonymous who went to Temple University. Again, you can read this very good example on your own, in your own time, but you will note that Mr. Anonymous here actually met one of the professors, and that is why he wanted to go to Temple University. So yeah, it's that sort of thing that you want to highlight in your essay. Future plans. Now, I guess this is related, like just one final thing before we end this session. This is related to Muhammad Fadlan's question just now, like how do you write a really good closing statement? Let's have a look at this. Right, so based on my experiences growing up at the university and now at work, I have come to the conclusion that a career in law is the single most effective way for me to help enact positive change and transform our fragmented healthcare delivery system. So like an action plan, as well as a mention of why your degree will help you achieve great things in the future. All right, so just as a final thing before we go, there's actually a reference list down here. So if you want to look at the full essays, or if you want to look at other sample essays from people who successfully got accepted at the top schools in the world, have a look at this reference list. All right, so that's the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for listening, and that's all for me.
Okay, thank you Gaby for the explanation. It is
Oke,
very
jadi udah
insightful
selesai ya
and
esai
also
hari ini
comprehensive.
gitu.
I hope everyone
Aku
has get a
kayak
better
jadi pengen
understanding of
nulis
writing
lagi
essays
esai,
and also
my personal
transcript.
statement gitu,
Thank you
kayak
once again Gaby.
Okay, thank you.
mengulang
Thank
lagi
you,
gitu
everybody.
guys. Kalian ada yang ada
Teman-teman,
plan
sebelum
sekolah
kita
luar negeri
mengakhiri
nggak?
acara kita hari ini, ada beberapa pesan dari Ibu Nika
Oke,
sebagai
sore ini itu dulu ya.
dan juga
See you next time. Kayaknya besok aku juga mau live tentang perkenalan sekolah di luar negeri gitu. Kayak aku daftar juga kayak ada information session dari University of Sydney kalau nggak salah gitu. Besok stay tune ya. See you tomorrow. Dadah.